Under the bigger heading, what does it mean to be European? We will now go to discussion number 2 with the title Borders of Europe. And to this discussion we will have again four panelists, first of whom is Simon Elo, who is the chairman of the Finns Party Youth. Welcome. Then we have, you can applaud if you want, but then let's give applause to everybody.
You don't need to if you don't want.
Then we have Blerta Hoxha, who is a policy researcher from the European movement in Albania. And then we have Päivi Mattila, who is Secretary General in the Finnish League for Human Rights. And this discussion will be then moderated by Saska Saarikoski, who is a journalist at the Helsingin Sanomat newspaper. So here you go. Welcome.
Okay, so welcome from my part as well. As was mentioned before, we will soon give you an opportunity to make questions and maybe even vote if kind of good things to vote about or vote over will appear. But we start the discussion by kind of a short kind of talks by the panelists that you might introduce, or if you want to tell us something more about yourself and also your take on the subject, Borders of Europe.
Well, for introduction, first of all, thank you for the kind invitation to be in this panel discussion. It's an interesting topic, and for sure when we have the Euro elections it will be even more interesting the closer we come to the election. My name is Simon Elo. I'm the chairman of the Finnish Party Youth. Obviously, as many of you know, the Finnish Party is one of the most vocal critics of the current European Union and its policies and the so-called Euro crisis. Besides of being a chairman of the youth wing, I also work as a city councillor in the city of Espoo, which is the second largest city in Finland, about 250,000 people. So it's not only about European politics, it's also about domestic politics. But I'll keep my introduction short and talk about the issues more later on when we get to the questions and everything.
Hello everyone, my name is Blerta Hoxha, as already mentioned, and I work since 4 years now for European Movement Albania. You can easily guess from the name that we are a pro-European organization. But I would like to also stress the fact that besides promoting European integration of Albania and that of the Western Balkans in general, much of our efforts, of our daily work actually goes to explain to the Albanian society not only the benefits of European integration, but also the responsibilities that come with that, the need for readiness, for the need for reform and change, and also a lot of our efforts go to dismantle some cliches about the European Union. So we promote EU integration, but without any idealization, let's say, of the project itself. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and also thanks from my part to the organizers. My name is Päivi Mattila. I come from a Finnish NGO, non-governmental organization, Ihmisoikeusliitto, Finnish League for Human Rights. We are the only Finnish human rights organization particularly concentrating on human rights situation in Finland. So our task is to push the Finnish government to protect human rights in Finland for all those who are here. We are a staff of 20 people working there. We have 6 mother tongues among our staff. That's Amhara, Dar, Polish, Swedish, Finnish, Somali. I think that's our mother tongue. So we are a very multi-diverse working community also here in Helsinki. And regarding the topic, maybe just a few points. Obviously, coming from a human rights organization, the issue of borders is very interesting, Europe and borders. I think Europe, in my understanding, understanding has always been a diverse continent. It has always been multi-religious, multicultural, multilinguistic, multi-ethnic continent, and I think it's important to keep up that tradition, which is there. And until now, the movement across the borders has been more from Europe to elsewhere. But now, obviously, the trend is also the other way around, which is fair enough and which is opportune, I think. And of course, there are not just borders between Europe and somewhere else, but also inner borders within Europe, not just borders between nations, be it within Europe or European Union, but also between different groups of people, minorities, religious minorities, ethnic minorities, gay people, sexual and gender minorities, whatever. There are a lot of borders also. So for me, borders are inside and also between Europe and different continents, and I think that's something we need to understand. Thanks.
Okay, I thought that we could start with a European idea, or what is Europe? Now, as we speak here, for tens of thousands of Ukrainians are on the streets, and they want a closer integration with Europe, or joining the Europe. Whereas obviously the President Yanukovych has other ideas. So, but you said, Simon said that you are critical about the European idea, or European Union, and whereas Blerta said that you are trying to make Albania join. So, I mean, could you discuss this? What is the Europe you would like to join and you are critical against?
Well, first of all, it's not a synonym to say Europe or European Union. It's a whole different thing. If I'm pro-European, it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily pro-EU, and that's a differentiation that I think it's really important to make. And for our party, that's essential. We are pro-European. We want to be Europeans. We value being European, but that doesn't mean that the current state that the Union is in, or where it's heading, that we see it's heading, is good for the continent, or for Finland for that matter. So that's one essential thing that you have to see in that question. Otherwise, I think it's really important to also, how would I say, think what are our common values. You said human rights. That's one of the common values that we have in Europe. But what are the other ones? Are they Christian values? Are the other religious values? What are they? That's something that we also have to discuss.
What's your point? What's your take?
I would say, as a Christian, that our continent is based on Christian values. Yeah.
Well, just a very flash reaction on the question of Christianity. As we all know, especially during the project for a constitution for Europe, it has been a much debated issue whether it should be added that Europe has Christian roots and is based on Christian values. Personally, I'm even surprised how much ground this thesis has won, actually, because in the concept of Europe and European history I have received through my education, I believe most of us have received. It would be very restrictive to have this vision, and it would also be historically wrong, to be honest, because that would mean that we start considering the history of Europe just reducing it to the last 2,000 years. And as we all know, and I believe we have this shared common teaching of history, we start much earlier, which is from the ancient Greeks, and if possible even earlier. So personally, this is why I find it a bit surprising why this thesis has gained so much ground. But yeah, concerning you asked why are we pro-European, and well, yes, exactly because of not so much because of the shared geography, which we also share, of course, being in the Balkans, but we want to have Albania, to see Albania in the future as a member of the EU, because of the shared values and principles, but which I personally believe are rather the humanistic values. Thank you.
But can you be a bit more concrete? We always talk about European values, but we are usually very vague when we talk about those values. A little bit more concrete. You know, what is it that European Union kind of what kind of demands are they making to Albania, and what do you have to rethink in order to be good Europeans? What do you think? Very pragmatic.
Just to be concrete but also brief, of course it's about fundamental rights, respect for democracy and tolerance and the whole set of other values of a similar kind that are listed in the charter. So, but these are very much the guarantees, let's say, of a democratic society, if I can go now more on the political side. Which is also a key driving force for us and the will to join. Not so much geographically, and we can later on discuss also the issue of the borders, which is our topic of the panel, but I would like to stress this very much. It's more about the values and the abstract things rather than the geographical borders.
Simon looks like he's going to add something about Christian values.
I was just going to add that I agree on the geographic issue, that it's not only about geographic, it's also about the values, and that's why I try to summarize them somehow. And I wouldn't talk about so much about just European values, but Western values that we share with the United States, with Canada, with Australia, with all of these other nations that are not necessarily European nations. And that's why I think that these kind of nations have been so much in cooperation, because they share certain values, and that's why I would rather talk about Western values than European values. And concerning religion, of course we have religious freedom, but think about past history. I think it's more based on Christianity and some of its precautions, or some of the things that Christianity has brought to this continent than on some other religions. Of course, later on we get influences from humanistic side of it, but still I think many of the values that we have these days, concerning human rights, for example, are based on Christian values.
But let me challenge you a bit there. I think if we talk about the strong points of Europe, I mean the development of Europe, I think it started from the separation of state and church and beginning of religious freedom. So it's not so much because of the religion, but because of the weakening of the religion that Europe.
In a sense, I agree, and it doesn't mean if I value Christian roots that we have, so to speak, doesn't mean that I devalue humanistic side or atheist side or non-religious side of our society. It doesn't mean that. It just means that I recognize the cultural values, the cultural heritage that we have on this issue. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't have influence later on. But as a political historian, I go in history as far as to the French Revolution. That's as far as I go as a political historian myself, as a profession. That's enough for me, so I don't go further than that. But of course we have different interpretations of all of this, but this is my view on it. And many Europeans probably have a different interpretation, and that's fine by me.
Thanks. Yes, I have some points. I think when you are demanding for concretion on values is an abstract term. So we cannot really have equal or common values, and we should not need to have ones. I don't think Europe should have shared values. I think we should have in each country strong legislation and laws, and then I hope political decision makers in each country or at the European Parliament level will make good decisions from the points of view of people's well-being or human rights for that matter. But I don't think we should have similar values.
Isn't that a bit strange to say that we shouldn't have shared values, because at the same time it's often said that European Union is the biggest exporter of values. And if you don't have shared values, how can we export them? I mean, how can we be unified with them?
Yeah, and isn't it so in a way that those European values they are hard to recognize when you have them. But when you don't have them, they are very easy to recognize. I mean, democracy, freedom of speech.
You still have something.
Well, I mean, Ukrainians. It's easy for them to say what are the European values because they are lacking them. But it seems that we in this room or in Brussels or in European Valley, in the European Parliament, it's kind of easier to oversee those things and see them as kind of self-obvious.
Well, you have to remember that most of the countries in this world are not democratic and they don't have the same kind of rights that we enjoy in the European countries and some of the other countries in the globe. So you have to also remember that this is not something that we can take for granted. I believe that we have certain shared values and that includes the Western ideal of human rights, and that's not also something that everybody shares.
So may I pose a direct question? Albania is a Muslim country, or how many of what's the percentage there? Well, you can point that out later, but anyway, they have a strong Muslim heritage there. So do you think they are not fit for Europe?
Well, I'm not the first one to inform them if to join the union or not. In my opinion, nobody should join the union at the moment. But I don't think that's the biggest issue there. In the case of Turkey, I feel that it's all about power politics. If Turkey would be a member of the European Union, it would be the sole biggest member and have the most influence politically. So I think that would be a problem. But in the case of Albania, it's a smaller nation, so I don't think this is really an issue. But I would say that don't join.
You want to comment that?
We want to join, first of all, and actually 86% of Albanians, according to a very fresh opinion poll, 86% support European integration, and this is also, rather than religion, this is also a sign of how people feel and of which kind of culture they feel they belong to, and what kind of development model they want to embrace for their country in the future. This is, I think, nevertheless, countries should not be judged in their European membership about the history and influences of religion, and even less on the size. You know, we cannot make an argument that Turkey, there are too many Muslims, and in Albania, since there are very few, little harm, and this is not, I think, exactly the. But I wouldn't agree that it's about power between religions. That's not how I see it.
How big is you get more votes in the parliament and everything?
Of course, but not. But you were referring to religions in this case, and I think this is a very reductive and a very superficial manner to consider what being European and being part of the EU implies. So
you want something?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's good to keep in mind, as I think Simon also sort of referred to, Europe is one thing, it's a continent, it's a geographical entity, and European Union, it's a political entity that some countries have decided to form. And also in that sense, I think as a political system, EU should actually be quite strong in setting up criteria related to human rights for those countries who want to join the European Union. Personally, all countries, yes, welcome. That's the system now we are in. But I think EU, this is what they should actually be strong about. Demand respect of minorities, such as Roma people in Albania or in other countries that want to join. That's the idea of political system. That's what they have power to actually do, demand something. That has not happened in the past years. But regarding the values, I go back. As I said, I don't think we should have common values, but we have sort of political decisions that we have made. And for me, the idea of Europe has been one of relative economic equality. And I fear something in so-called vanishing of European values. For me, it's that we start to copy more of what you just referred to, United States and Asia, which to me are very unequal economically. And that's my fear, rather than some other fears that have been referred to. So I think that's the idea of Europe. Relative economic equality in the past 50 years, of course, relative.
Now I don't get you. I mean, past 50 years, I mean, there has been huge inequality between North and South, and European Union has kind of worked to diminish it. And well, I don't really get your point, but I get your criticism about your economic policy. You want to continue on that? Or? Yeah.
I don't think European Union, in my mind, is constructed to make all the countries equal as possible regarding social issues or economic issues for that matter. If you think about countries like Greece or Finland, there are certain natural reasons why these countries are in a different position economically from each other. And certain northern countries compared to southern countries, the same issue. And that's the basic sort of argument why this kind of union, and especially the euro currency in its current form, doesn't work, and it cannot work because these countries are culturally, economically, and other issues too different from each other. And in the case of like United States, well, it's in everybody's own perception if it's unequal or not, but the thing is that it's equal in the sense that they have a certain same culture, they have same language. Of course, they have differences between the states. I have been many states in the United States, and I know that they have differences, but still it's much more unified than Europe has ever been. So there are certain reasons why it works there, the federalism, and why it cannot work here if we go to that. And as I said, the euro currency in its current form, it cannot work.
So what is your idea? Is European Union, is it coming apart? I mean, obviously we're talking about economics, and the system, the old system, just did not work. In the crisis, it did not work. So either my take is that either we have to move forward to more federal system, or we have to take a few steps back. What do you think will happen, or is it possible that the whole building will collapse?
Well, if I may continue shortly and then give back to you. I believe, as you said, that there are certain options that we have. One of them is to have a federal union, and in order to save the euro currency in its current form, I think you need to have a federal union. The other option is to kick out the countries that have done poorly in the union, in the euro currency, I mean, countries like Greece. Either they go out, or countries that have done well, like Finland or Holland or Germany, go out. That's the other option. And the third option is that it will collapse. And I think one of these options will happen. And in my mind, the second option would be the best, to kick out the countries that have done poorly and to sort of default the situation. I'm not the first one to say that we should collapse the union, because I think that would be, at least in the short term, that would be quite a bad option, economically and probably even socially. It would create a lot of restlessness in many societies. So I prefer the second option.
So, Päivi, yeah.
I'm happy to learn that nevertheless you wish to see some sort of union, and a pretty strong one actually, if you want to kick out the weakest ones. Well, there is obviously a very severe crisis, and it is more than the crisis of economic crisis or the crisis of the euro. Personally, I think it is more than this. We all know it's a legitimacy crisis, and a deeper one, of course. But I don't think that I don't think that it will collapse, because it will evolve most likely, and just because even if because it has evolved all along, the European Union we have today is very different from from the initial purpose and from what we had. It is normal that there is an evolution. We cannot know what the needs will be, what kind of union we will need to have in 50 years, just like 50 years ago they couldn't know, of course. and as we go ahead we learn, but the important thing is that the Union becomes a larger area of peace, of people gathered not around the aim to have the same wealth, because not even in a national country you cannot have the same wealth, but an area of countries and people gathered around the same principles. Because this is the principles of democracy and fundamental rights and rule of law. This is the fundamental part, and of course of prosperity, depending on the people's ambitions. But you will always have these disparities. Personally, I wouldn't suggest to kick out those who perform poorly. Also because historically, we also know that the Union we have today. Initially was a small nucleus of very strong countries, and not all the countries that have been added along were very strong or comparable to Germany, for example. But somehow they were admitted. It was admitted that they had the potential to develop. So I wouldn't be harsh in.
That has been a mistake. That they have been admitted. That has been a mistake.
That they admitted Finland, for example, which was weaker than Germany.
That was a mistake from our part.
No, I think personally, I think there will be an evolution, and of course the crisis is very, very severe, but it won't even be the last, because we are entering a very long process. We often talk about federalism, should we move ahead, etc. But also it took quite a while for the United States to become the state they are today. We see today a federal state. Europe has its own challenges, starting from the language and many, many other ones. But we should also be patient and understand that it is a very, very long, process. We are not 100% sure that the outcome should be or will be federalism, but personally I think that I'm not afraid that Europe will collapse, because even if it collapses, let's assume for 1 second, in the form it is now, we will always need some sort of collaboration. We will always need another union anyway. So I don't see the scenario of going back to every country operating separately. And,
to me, the whole discussion about Europe is sometimes strange that we Europeans discuss so much about Europe. I don't think in other continents there is so much discussion about how we will do. There's more vision about this sort of movement between those continents, economic movement, people's movement, and so on. So I don't understand why we have to be so worried about what will happen for Europe. Again, I think you're referring to European Union now that we are discussing. It's a different thing. Europe will not collapse. It's a continent. It's a geographical strong entity. But you're asking our opinions. I'm not a politician, but I will also give a vision. I think most likely, I agree with. I think your prognosis is somewhat correct. European Union as a political entity most likely will evolve and enlarge. And I don't take a stance on that. I'm not a politician, but I think that is what will happen. Turkey will eventually join, other countries will eventually join, and I think the main reason behind that development is an economic one. Asia is very strong in terms of business and so forth, so are other continents, and I think that is one of the ideas. Then again, as you said, Berta, for some peoples and countries, of course, the vision of peace is a very attractive one. So I understand that in countries with the recent history of war and conflict within Europe, the attractiveness of peace is so strong that they will eventually want to join the European Union.
Now when we have been discussing the European Union, maybe we could have our first votes. So there's a clear disagreement here, or division here in the table. We all seem to agree that there's a problem. The system now, today, it doesn't work. So either we need more integration, move forward with the integration, or we need less, so we take steps back. So all those who think that the crisis will be won by more integration, raise a blue blue paper, and with a less integration, please raise an orange paper.
If you are Dutch, raise this up.
Okay, so it seems, well, it's hardly surprising being in the under European flag here with the Eurooppalainen Suomi event that the blue flags had an overwhelming majority here. But let's move a little bit more. We will get to the European borders and the outer world as well. I mean, we won't be staying within Europe all the time. But one more thing that we're talking about United States. That's one problem I think with Europe is that we Europeans, we have hardly a kind of identity. We don't identify ourselves to Europe. I mean, as Simon was saying, let's kick out those poor Greeks. I mean, that's hardly solidarity. That's hardly European solidarity. So, I mean, is there such a thing as being a European, having European solidarity? Well, we can sing the national anthem, and the flag hardly raises any strong emotions, and we don't really have any European football team we all root for. So, I mean, on emotional level, I think that is the one big challenge for Europe, that it has been built from like upside down, from the top. So the Brussels is maybe working, and the Eurocrats they might have some idea of the European identity, but the grassroots people hardly have. So we feel your party is Finn's party, whatever that is. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, we identify as being Finns or Swedes or Czech or Albanians, but hardly Europeans. Right. So, can you know, in our time, I mean, before we die, will we see kind of European identity?
Saska,
European
you said it yourself. You said it yourself that they are trying to do it from the top to the bottom. It doesn't work. You cannot do it like that. You cannot force the people to have some kind of identity that they don't relate to. If they naturally relate to being European and they have some kind of value for it, go for it. But if they don't, they don't. You cannot change it by officially saying that, hey, we are Europeans and you should value it because of this and this. I would never raise my hand in the salute for the European flag, never. But for the Finnish flag, for sure. So there is a difference between that and that doesn't mean...
Let's not go into salutes.
But that doesn't mean, and I mean military salute, you know. But that doesn't mean that I don't have like European things that I value. I support Arsenal. I saw one guy here in the audience as well supporting this great football club from England.
Yeah, I thought you all have to support Millwall.
No. Only this one guy. Only if you are chairman, then you have to support Millwall. But this is the thing. I mean, it doesn't mean that you are against certain issues if you don't relate to this citizenship of being European. You are still European in this sense of values. And referring to what said earlier about the federal union in the United States, you have to remember that they had a really hard history on that. I mean, they had a civil war to have a federal union. They had the Confederates against the Federalists, so to speak, from the north against the south. What is the union that we have these days in Europe? It's a confederate union of independent nations. So we have confederation in Europe these days, that the south in the United States tried to have there as well. So they had this conflict in the end, a violent conflict, and that's how they, in the end, created their federal union. I wouldn't, of course, want to have a violent conflict, and I'm not saying that I believe that we would have a violent conflict. When we discuss about the United States, you have to remember that it's quite a harsh history, how they ended up where they are now.
Yeah, on this one I agree very much with Simon Elo, and I hope this is encouraging for the next questions as well. I also don't think we would need to have a common identity. For me, it's a scary thought, really. Why should we have? I think if there is some value that should be common, it's the value of the multiple identities. And I think we are allowed to have, many of us have multiple identities, and it's also very naive in a way to think that all people residing in Finland or Europe would have some common identity, and that's fine with me. I really very much like the idea of having several identities.
I would just like to add that individual identity, but also collective identity, is obviously constructed, meaning that, I'm sorry to say, but the Finns of today are not the same as the Finns of 2,000 years ago, just like the Albanians of today are not. Albanians like to think that they descend directly from the Illyrians, but it's not true. I mean, there have been many influences, and identity, and national identity in particular, is constructed, is evolving constantly, and is influenced non-stop, just because of the very nature of societies in interaction. And in this sense, also European identity is becoming stronger and stronger. For example, Simon recognizes himself to have more common things with the other Europeans rather than with the Muslims, as we saw, for example. So towards, especially, it was also mentioned in the other panel, we know we are European immediately as we confront with the third parties, if we can call them in this way. And so it is not a full-fledged identity yet. It might become. I see an intensification of this, especially when I see the attitude of generally of the Europeans towards third parties. Yeah, so this is what, and also I wanted also to add that personally, I don't see a national identity like being Finnish or Albanian as conflicting and competing with the European identity. You are European just because you are Finnish.
It doesn't compete in values, but it does compete if me as a Finn, I'm forced to be something that I don't want to be. And if my government or our politicians as lawmakers and deciders are forced to do certain decisions that they don't want to make just because of they are in this union and have this shared identity of being in this union. And that is something that is ultimately in conflict with the national identity if we think about these kind of decisions, like with this politics of having these stimulus or aid packages, whatever you want to call them in English, to these countries that have done poorly in this Euro crisis. That's something that a lot of Finns feel that we shouldn't be in. Of course, our politicians in democratic manner have agreed to do it, but still a lot of Finns that feel that it's in conflict with our national interest. But somebody might argue that it's in the interest of the European Union and so to speak, the European identity, so they can be.
I mean, yeah, but now you are kind of drawing the borders around Finland. I mean, wouldn't
the last I saw we have borders.
Yeah, but well, they were drawn by people anyway. But I mean, you are not. I mean, there are other groups of people who have been doing very poorly. Like Kainu is doing extremely poorly, but you are not kicking out Kainu. And I mean, you could start. I mean, you could start doing the same logic and saying that you are not doing well enough for Finland.
But that's the issue I have. We have more. I mean, I have more at least. You can speak everybody for yourself, but I have more as a Finn in common with the Finn from Kainu, being myself from the southern Finland, than like with the Greek. Even though, of course, we have certain shared values and ideals, for sure, with Greeks. But still, I have more in common with those people in my own country. And you cannot underestimate the importance of the value of the friendship and sort of connectedness that people in the same national country have for each other. Even if you don't like it, it's still there.
But it's like Blerta said, it's a changing thing. I mean, in 50 years it can be different.
Of course, as I said, if it naturally changes, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it has to be natural.
I must say that coming from very southern Finland, I think you are right. You have more common with people in Kainu than in Greece. I sometimes feel the other way around, although my roots are mostly in Finland, but it's in the urban southern Finland. And again, that's fine. We have very different identities in that sense. But I think I'm actually here now going back to what you asked about, my point about values between economic values and the economic inequality and so forth. I think what has been constructed in Europe, and that is common actually to most European countries, is somewhat of a social welfare system that is based on taxation, and also there are some services that are actually legally free to everybody, such as public education. And that differs actually very much between European countries, almost all of them, between Asia and the United States. And that's something I would like to keep.
Okay, then I have to make a question. I mean, I gather you are pretty much pro-immigration. So, do you think the welfare state can survive open borders? I mean, it's a welfare state. Like Simon has been praising here. Welfare state is a most nationalist phenomenon. So it has a very not even borders. It has walls, and it says that this welfare is only for us. So, but if you open the windows and if you open the doors, will you still have the welfare state? Is it possible?
Okay, this was first for me. I think that is a good question. It's a very difficult question. It's a fair question. That's why the borders thing is actually crucial. For me, we maybe have to more discuss about humanity. For me, European Union, it's a construction. So is Europe. If I have to value, or if I have to either respect value of all human beings, or then somehow reserve some kind of European system. For me, it's a personal choice, and of course, it's my profession. I value everybody's right to human rights, different rights. But I understand that others have a different view.
So, what do you mean? Human right is the right to come here?
There are very many human rights related to right to come here. There are many regulations. European Union citizens have a right to free movement. Of course, what I think in the world in general, what happens, rich people like me, I don't know about the others here, but me, on the global terms, I'm very, very rich. Of course, it's not so much in Finland, right? We have the right to move anywhere. I can move to Beijing at any time I want because I have the capacity and make a lot of money there by working for the United Nations or for Nokia. They would never employ me, I'm sure, but still, is it there anymore? I don't think. That's the biggest gap, I think. Rich people, educated people are welcome everywhere. And the Finnish government program on immigration 2020, it's an official program now, which we have also commented, obviously. It values highly educated, rich people. You don't even have to read between lines, that's there. But from humanitarian or human perspective, of course human rights also, I don't think that's right. We should have similar right to move irrespective of who we are, what our background is.
Concerning the survival of the welfare state, actually immigration towards Europe, in many ways you would think that would challenge the welfare state, but in many other ways it could be the salvation of the welfare state. And needless to say, there are endless studies about this. The European population is aging. Most of your youth has to work for an unaffordable number of aged people. So, of course, welcoming more people could be the solution to have more young workforce and to go on and have this consolidated welfare state survive. So it really depends on how Europe plays this and how Europe manages this. This is not the only way. I'm not suggesting that you should just open borders and let billions of people come in. This is one way to see it as an advantage and to encourage immigration, not by people, Africans risking their lives, but in more dignified ways. Another way would probably be not to base the welfare on polluting other countries and making the earth unlivable for in other parts of the world. Because of course we want to build huge walls, not to let anybody enter the Schengen area, but we must also not forget the fact that Europe should be promoting, and all the rich countries should be promoting peace and economic development and possibly stop polluting the other areas of the world so that they can become prosperous and livable for other people, and maybe not everybody will be wishing to come to Finland or to Schengen in general. So.
First of all, concerning European Union, I don't want to have a unified immigration policy on the European Union level, because in my mind that would be probably bad for Finland. Regarding immigration as a whole, I'm for immigration if it's beneficial for Finland and it's beneficial for the immigrants that come here. And at the moment, I think the biggest problem with the Finnish immigration policy is that we don't really have a Finnish immigration policy. We don't have any kind of vision that what we want of this phenomenon of immigration. What kind of immigrants we want here, with what kind of skills, with what kind of ideals and everything. I mean, countries like United States historically has had vision. Canada has vision now, Australia has some kind of vision. Even Denmark, even though the vision is quite strict, they have a vision. So I think we should take example from these kind of countries that have vision and try to form our own. And that's a discussion we have to have between each other, what kind of vision that would be. And concerning of being rich in a global sense, I don't feel that I should feel like ashamed or anything to be rich. I think that we should be proud of being rich in Finland. I mean, Finland is one of the best countries in the world, and we should be proud of it. If we are rich compared to somebody else, probably we are. But I'm not ashamed of that. I think it's one of the success stories of Finland.
Yeah, we haven't plundered or colonizing the resources of Africa like many other countries.
We have never colonized anybody.
Yeah, we have been colonized. Yeah, that's right. No, but I'm not stopping in the Finnish borders. What about European borders? You were saying that you don't want to have a common European or EU kind of immigration policy. But what about Dublin too? I mean, I think it's quite problematic that this agreement where the country of or the port of entrance has to bear all the responsibility, and for countries which are far away from the kind of hotspots, it's kind of easy to be the free rider in the system. So should we bear more responsibility and help countries like Greece, where the immigrants are in a very dire straits? Let's take Päivi in.
Okay.
You have the microphone all the time.
I know. I use it.
From our perspective, Dublin 2 should be removed. We should get rid of it. The governments should get rid of it. And as long as it's there should be, of course, more solidarity. It doesn't make any sense that we don't take more solidarity alongside with Italy and so forth. And also there are so many deals between the southern European governments with, for example, like Libya and other northern African governments that are not based on the respect of human rights. So all that should be brought much more to open. In general, I share Simon's vision about the need for vision of what will happen in 50 years. I don't know whether our personal visions are similar, but I also like the idea that there should be a long-term vision. Europe will not be the same in 50 years, and we just have to understand that whether we like it or not, it will be a more diverse continent. That's for sure. That's my prognosis, at least. Let's see what we think after 50 years. We will be a bit older then, but then we have to start, analyzing that long-term perspective. And one thing, I don't understand how we could just sort of both have the cake and eat it, so we can get a lot of people here. That's the vision. Like you're also saying, we should get more people from outside to take care of our elderly people, for example. But at the same time, we want to be, or the governments, not me, want to be very selective of whom they want to take. So this selective mentality has to go, if you ask me.
Yes, I want to make a practical point, point of common sense, that if you wish to, as a Finn, to continue to go to Sweden without being checked at the border, without having to change money, and to go like this to the rest of Europe, you will have to sit and not...
We have to change money.
Okay, in Sweden, yes, but I mean, if you wish to keep the benefits you have, not to have the border, not to be checked every time and feel a stranger, a foreigner, but just go ahead where you are heading to. If you wish to continue to have these benefits, you will have to sit and discuss more and more on how to address immigration at a European level, not at the national level. You will have to have a vision at European level, and of course it cannot only, in this sense, it will not eventually be just the burden of Greece or Italy to deal with these people just because they happen to be at these borders with Africa in this case, but otherwise you have to make a practical decision and think, if you like, that if you have a tour and you go to France, you change again, you get checked, you go to Italy, you have to suffer again at the border, etc. But I think it would be more practical to sit together and discuss common challenges. So.
Well, I'm not a socialist, so I don't have much need or admiration for the term solidarity. So I don't really care about that much. If we are
you think only socialists have solidarity?
Yeah,
that's
for
right.
For me, it's a socialist term in its essence. So I don't really have no need for that.
You are hardly European. You are more West than that, I think.
Well, anyway. Talking about the European borders or more Schengen borders, there is a reason that Schengen is a treaty between European countries. It's our inner pact. We don't have a global Schengen treaty with all the countries in the world, and there's a new reason for that. So in my mind, there's no problem if we have the border checks, and quite strict border checks and guards and everything in the border of the Schengen area. There's a reason for that.
But what do you think about? I don't recall. Did you answer about this thing about Dublin II? Do you think that it's really right that, for example, countries like Greece have to bear the responsibility of the refugees?
As long as Finland is the net payer of the European Union for countries like Greece, I have no problem if they have more burden than we do. No problem with that.
Well, that's I think like comparing apples and oranges there. Net payment and refugee crisis and Dublin II.
Yeah, but they have
different things.
If they have more refugees, that means that they pay more, and if we pay more to them because of these packages and because of the bad economic situation that we have decided to aid in this way, if they pay more on this issue and we pay more on them, net on the European level, then it's quite balanced in my mind.
So, yeah. No,
you just reminded me of one of my favorite French professors who would always reject a bit this populist idea that of these countries, even in Germany, it's very said that we pay so much for the others, but you know, who has ever been able to calculate all the benefits that came from these rich countries because of the single market, you know? Nobody can calculate that. It's true that Germany pays a lot, for example, but it's true that they pay, but no one is, on the other side, able to ever calculate all the profit it has had because of this large market. So you should always consider what you receive as well in many abstract ways that are, of course, more difficult to calculate.
But now I got quite uneasy, almost upset about what you said about solidarity. there, and then I kind of.
Maybe I didn't say it because you are here.
Yeah. You might have, but no. I mean, in the beginning of our discussion, you were saying something about. I kind of recall something about, was it Christian values? Yeah, Christian values, and well, I'm not a Christian. I'm not a good Christian anyway.
No good Christian in his good mind talks about solidarity. They are socialists. They talk about solidarity.
Yeah. Jesus was a socialist. Yeah.
No way. He might have a long hair, but he wasn't a hippie or socialist. No way.
Yeah. There was I just recall this kind of a sentence that do to others what you wish them to do to you. Isn't that kind of a basis for solidarity?
That's solidarity in my mind. In my mind, in the political term, solidarity is something that socialists have invented and used these days as well. And usually, if they tell that we have to have a solidarity towards somebody, it's usually somebody that doesn't live in your country, that you have to pay a lot of money to, that doesn't share your values, doesn't benefit you. So I'm not for solidarity.
Yeah, well, you have your kind of an old or your own description about solidarity. You can be.
This is my perception.
Yeah. You want?
Yeah, about your question still about this, whether the border should actually be open. I think that's actually a very interesting question. I often think about this because I see the Finnish government and other European governments spending so much time and effort in trying to exclude the kind of people that they don't want to have here. So if you actually would start calculating how much time we as a human rights organization, for example, spend on trying to push the governments here and there, and they keep to the very nitty-gritty detailed politics of exclusion in a way. Maybe not Finland as much as some other countries, but Finland to a fair extent as well. And the people, your kind of supporters also spend a lot of time, for example, in the internet trying to propagate their own ideas on this question, which is fine, of course, it's democratic and all that. But I seriously think this is a question the government should seriously think about. I don't know whether whether it should be open. Probably it's too much of a wide vision now, but maybe at some point Europe will have to, or the governments and the union will have to consider it, because the nitty-gritty details is just, it's not getting us to a long-term vision, which we both are, for example, demanding for. And also I think this kind of selectivity, you spend so much time in trying to attract certain people here to take care of us, for example, when we get old, from the Philippines, for example. And at the same time, you spend so much time, for example, you fly individuals with 3 policemen or policewomen to Iraq or Iran, for example. You guard them. 3 adult people guard 1 individual on a flight and so forth. So there is something weird.
Yeah, but I have kind of I don't know if it's a wise thought or not, but that's one thing I don't understand, is that when people come here, like there was this question about this Russian lady who was introduced in the television about 2 weeks ago. And when people come here and they have stayed here for 2 years and they have learned language and they have made friends and contacts and they have shown that they are able to fit into society, and then after that, all that work, they are shipped back, and that I find crazy. I think either you let in people, but you don't, or you don't, but you don't take them in for 2 years, because that's when most of the expenses come. I mean, they learn the language and everything, and then it takes 2 years, and then they are kicked out. That just doesn't make sense to me.
I agree.
Well, I agree in the sense that we are not kicking out or not letting in those kind of people that we should be kicking out or not letting in. Like as I said earlier, that in some of the interviews that I've been on television and radio, that I'm quite amazed that our how do you say this suojelupoliisi in English? Well, this security police we have in Finland has like let in certain kind of preachers, like Islamic preachers, that really hate speech, that give hate speech in all the countries that they come to, and countries like Britain and France and Germany have rejected them from coming to these countries and have their sermons there and everything, and Finland lets them in. And certain people that have done crimes here and that haven't had citizenship because of these crimes, that have been rejected of citizenship because of them, because of these crimes, they still don't get deported. So in my mind, the basic problem that we have is that we deport the kind of people that should actually stay in Finland, and we don't deport the kind of people that should be deported. These kind of people that make crimes and don't behave here well. And I know these certain cases have been like in the media from like Thailand and Vietnam and different countries. There are people that have paid their taxes, that have raised their family here, have been behaving well and everything, and still they might get deported, and that's wrong in my mind.
I agree with the sense that extreme ideas also move across globally, everywhere. They have always done so. I have just seen a very good film on Uganda about US Christian right fundamental groups that actually go to Uganda. It's a kind of God Loves Uganda is the name of the movie, and it's a very good description of what is going on there now. That fundamental American, that's US, not North America, US groups preach their own ideology, and through that inflict hate speech towards Ugandan homosexuals, for example. Similarly, other extreme ideas cross over the globe, including to Finland.
And of course, you have to be strict on all these kind of groups, regardless of what is their ideology. But I took this example because I have been writing about it, and actually one of the imams of one of the mosques in Finland, actually when I spoke to him, he said he has been wondering the same. He doesn't understand why these kind of people are given the opportunity to say these kind of things.
Okay, but so we agree that the religious fanaticism is the problem. But there's about 10 minutes to go, and in the beginning we promised an opportunity to make questions. So would you have questions at this time to any of the panelists, all of them? Yes.
One question. Is it possible that we don't understand that we are living in a country which has a name, United States of North Atlantic? Question for all, and for Helsingin Sanomat especially. You can answer that.
Yes, I could if I understood. What was the question?
There is a conversation of free trade businesses between the United States and Europe today. If the contract is value, we are living economical in the United States of North Atlantic. Brussels had NATO and there is European Union, so they are like lovers today in Brussels.
I could answer this.
Yeah. Simon takes it.
I think it's quite interesting to say lovers. I wouldn't say that the European nations and the United States at this current time are really lovers. If you think about Snowden case and everything, it's far from love. But if you think about this free trade treaty with negotiations between the United States and the European Union, a lot of people, from me as a EU critic especially, have asked if I support that or not. And I have quite frankly said that we should first see that what's the outcome of the negotiations. I mean, we don't know. It would be quite stupid for me to say that I'm outright against it or for it before we know what kind of an outcome we get from the negotiations. So we'll see what happens and what kind of a treaty they will present to us, and then we can decide on that. But I don't think that we are real lovers, no.
Please, gentlemen, in the front row.
Good afternoon, Neil from European Movement Ireland. I got slightly uneasy when you described getting rid of Dublin, especially when you mentioned getting rid of Europe's weaker states. But thankfully I remembered, of course, you were talking about the asylum treaty, and that's another discussion. But I do want to go back to the original point where you discussed the weaker states. You mentioned Greece, that's one of them. In about 5 days' time, the country I come from, leave the EU programme. Thanks for the help, appreciate it. Solidarity in action, I'm not a socialist either. However, I want to know, what do the panel, and not just you, Simon, because I'm not picking on you, what do the panel define as a weak country? Is it solely economic? Is it solely the countries that have been caught up in the Eurozone through their own inactions, as well as the global environment? But does it go beyond that? Does it go into the field of human rights? Does it go into the field of corruption? Should Bulgaria be removed from the European Union? Should Austria have been moved 10 or 12 years ago when they elected Jörg Haider's party because of their contravention of certain rights that the EU had promoted? Croatia just put a ban in, or voted to ban same-sex marriage. That's not a EU human right, but it could come in course. What happens if Ireland wanted to return the death penalty? We abolished it in the early 90s. What are the grounds that the panel, if any, feel the country should be kicked out of the Union?
That is a very, very big question for 5 minutes, but let's take Blerta first.
Yeah, I would like to comment on this by saying that it's of course it's a tricky question. I don't even like very much the formulation to kick out the country. Who are we to kick out? Who would kick out? Who is the noble, the best country? Because you listed, of course, too cold. I'm sorry. Because you listed, of course, a whole set of issues. One country is weak in terms of economy, another, all countries have problems of corruption to different degrees, of course, some to very bad degrees and others to much lighter ones, but no one is a virtuous country, of course, that's why I don't like the very idea of one or two countries considering themselves virtuous, perfect, and kicking out someone. So personally, I don't think there should be even a formulation of this unless something very, very fundamental, something concerning very fundamental rights and values of democracy is put into question and is a threat for everybody. And in this case, I don't imagine a club of 5 virtuous countries, but the whole community, the whole of 28 countries discussing a very, very severe issue, but really I am considering something that would really, really harm democracy. Just a very hypothetical case, because personally I cannot imagine it, but for sure it shouldn't be something for economic reasons or reasons that can be amended. And it's a two-way relation. It's not that you are there begging to stay in. You are also in because you have made a lot of reforms. You have agreed to change. You have agreed to share some responsibilities. So also it depends on the countries. We also have countries who want to leave. So let's not just put everything in as if there is someone with a stick that will punish you if you don't behave, and they will kick you out, because it's not the spirit of the union. I would hope, at least.
But maybe not to kick out, but I see maybe you don't need the big stick, but you can have a lot of smaller sticks, like in the case of Hungary, where they have been violating certain European principles, and I think the pressure coming from Brussels has kind of forced them to amend. So I think it's a very long road to kicking out any country. I mean, there are many smaller things you can do.
Yes, and of course I would list the measures taken in the case of Hungary just as the safeguards that the countries together have in order to have some countries respect the fundamental issues, such as it was in the case of Hungary.
Yes, definitely.
And I really agree with you, actually, what you say, that this is what the European Union should be doing, and also answering to your question a little bit, they should actually put more pressure in terms of human rights. I mean, if they are common values, I don't know, but they are at least they are agreed regulations based on international conventions, and here I actually think of United Nations, thank gods, whatever there are, for United Nations, which should be seen sort of above also regional unions, whether it's African or European or whatever, that have also certain standards that individual states have to apply to and should follow. But also I think within European Union, governments like Finland, they should be more brave. They could be easily much more braver to also discuss openly human rights violations, whether it's Hungary or Sweden. No, Sweden is not there. No, it's there. Or UK or Ireland for that matter. If it's death penalty or abortion or whatever issue is at stake, then we should be brave and open about it. I don't understand otherwise why EU would exist.
If I still may shortly answer this really good question. First of all, I don't think that Ireland is one of the weak countries. You said certain reasons why it's not the weak country anymore. It is one of the strong countries again. And that's thanks to you Irish for doing what you have done. And some pro-EU people could maybe use Ireland as an argument for certain actions that the EU has done, and maybe rightly so. So Ireland is not one of them, but Greece certainly is, and I don't see much hope for that country in the euro currency in its current state, and Portugal is one of the potential weak ones, sad. But concerning the criteria, we had certain criteria when we took countries to this currency. What are the criteria that you have to meet in order to be this currency zone? The problem is that we haven't, and in the EU as well, we haven't really observed them and really saw that these countries hold them. And it's the same problem with other countries as well. But even France and some other countries are violating those regulations as well. So it's not only about the weak countries; it's a problem with the whole union, and maybe that's the biggest reason why I'm not critical of the whole union, because it's a sole mess, the whole union.
So let's take one more question, one last question, and then it's the time. So the lady there.
My question is for Simon. As I understand, you are very proud of being Finn, true? So what exactly is your achievement in this? Because I see being proud of something as for your skill or your achievement. You just happen to be born in Finland. Why are you so proud of it?
Good question.
Well, first of all, I was, as you said, born in Finland, and that's one of the successes that I have had in my life, and maybe the biggest one. It's not because of myself, I admit. It's more bigger powers than me. And everybody in this room who's a Finn, I congratulate you. Even the Irish Guinness is my favorite beer, by the way. So I congratulate all of the different Europeans here for doing so well to be born in a European country. Of course, it's not the thing that I could be only proud of being because I'm born in a certain country. But what I'm proud of is certain values, certain society that we have built here, the welfare society. Even though I'm not a socialist, I support the sole idea of a welfare state. I think it's in its essence it's a good idea if it's done well. Unfortunately, at the moment it's done pretty badly, but still it's a good idea. So there are certain things that I'm proud of, and that makes me proud of being Finn.
But they're out of their capacity.
What have I done? I'm in politics. I've done a lot.
If you're Greek, would you be proud just the same as you are a Finn?
If I would be a Greek, of course they have a great history, for sure. If I would be a Greek, for sure. By their own merits, not the same merits as in Finland, but their own merits, of course.
Yeah, well, we could have another panel about John Rawls and the coincidence of being born in a place or not, but we don't have time for that, so we just have to thank the audience, thank the panelists, and move forward with these ideas we got. Thank you.